So, I started a new job and I was 20 years old at the time. It was a trainee at a hairdresser's. I spent the whole day on my feet making coffees, tea and brushing up the hair on the floor. Doesn't seem like hard work, but the hairdresser was very busy because a bride was in with her bridesmaids trying out different hairstyles, so I had to stay a bit longer. I started at 9 and finished at 5. So after my shift, all I could think about was a nice warm bath. My legs were killing me. I lived with my boyfriend who was out of town doing some jobs for his dad to help him pay the rent. It was a fairly nice house. It belonged to his brother who allowed us to move in. As soon as I got home, I relaxed for a bit and then went up the stairs, ran the bath, locked the door and got in. So, at this point I was drifting away in a very relaxing hot bath, but then I heard a noise on the stairs and it startled me. I convinced myself I was being paranoid because I don't like being home alone, but then I heard it again. It was like someone was slowly sneaking up the stairs. I lay still in the bath, making sure the water didn't splash. While I was doing this, I listened and I wasn't being paranoid. Someone was sneaking up the stairs very slowly, step by step. I'm lying in the bath, terrified with tears running down my face. The noise had moved from the stairs to the hallway, and it was getting closer and closer, until it stopped outside my bathroom door. I froze, no movement, and I even held my breath. I didn't know how long this happened for, but it felt like hours. I could hear breathing against the door, a light faint tap on the door. I stayed quiet and prayed they didn't bust the door down. This must have lasted a few minutes, but it felt like hours. My fear was confirmed. Very loud feet were making their way down the stairs and my back door slammed open. I jumped out of the bath, ran down the hall and grabbed the phone which we had in our bedroom, straight back to the bathroom and locked the door. So, I called the police. My skin was wrinkled from the water and I was shaking, crying on the phone to the operator. She told me to stay in the bathroom with the door locked until 2 police officers would come and she would tell me when they were there. Dripping wet with my back pressed against the bathroom door, shivering, I waited. She stayed on the phone until the police came. They checked the back and front door. The back door was wide open. I stayed in the bathroom until a police officer shouted up it was safe to come out. When he did, I ran down the stairs like my life depended on it. The woman officer calmed me down while I told her what happened. She asked me if it could have been my boyfriend or anyone I knew. The answer was no. His brother moved away. My family don't live near me anymore, and my boyfriend was out of town with his dad helping him with a job. Nothing was taken. Everything was in place except the back door was wide open. They took my statement, asked me if there was anywhere that I could go, and honestly, the answer was no. I was told to get a security system like an alarm. The police did a great job and I felt so much better. They checked up the house and the neighbours, and they also warned the neighbours. I couldn't get hold of my boyfriend until he came home, and I told him what happened. He was shocked to say the least. And then, to make matters worse, the neighbour had someone try to break into their house later that night. Now, I'm 23 and no longer live in that house, still with my boyfriend. I have a huge dog, a German Shepherd who is a guard dog, but I still fear taking baths. I have a motion-sensed light that goes off when someone enters our garden and a security system. As for the creep outside my bathroom door, they never caught him. My story takes place in the spring of 2000. I had recently gotten my first puppy, a puppy mix, a very longed-for contribution to my life. I was 20 and had just moved into a dog-friendly apartment building and was enjoying the hell out of finally having a little pup in my life. I started walking him several times a day and soon interacted with lots of new people who also walked their dogs the same place I did. There were many really nice people that I got to know, and then there was Hugo. He was a 45-ish bloke with shaven head and a way of talking to you as if he was your best, oldest friend in the world. I didn't want to be rude and tell him to stay away from me. Not at first, but when I started getting texts from him, without even giving him my number, I told him to please leave me alone. He would inform me as if it was perfectly normal that he would sit and wonder if I was home and drive by to check my car was in the parking lot. If I wasn't, he admitted to feeling jealous and badly done by wondering who I was with. I started avoiding the trails that I knew he often walked and instead took my dog to a forest area outside the city where he would play and run around and have a great time. I started getting emails from Hugo where he held long one-sided conversations about why we made a perfect couple. I ignored the emails. Then I got letters, no stamp in the mail, where he informed me about where he had seen me, what I was wearing, and where my 4-year-old niece went to daycare.
She looks just like you.
This is where I started to freak out a bit, and went to the police for support. The policeman informed me that even if his behaviour was indeed disturbing, he had made no actual real threat, and therefore police could do nothing apart from phoning him and telling him off. I figured they must have done, because the texting and emailing stopped. Months went by, and I forgot about the whole thing, until one evening in the beginning of September, I was babysitting my niece and decided to take her and the dog to my favourite spot along the forest trail. There is a bench and a fire pot, and we would bring hot dogs and cocoa, and have a nice evening outdoors. My niece was halfway into her second hot dog, and I was over by the riverside, throwing sticks into the water for my little dog to retrieve, when I suddenly realized that my niece was talking to someone, giggling and laughing. I turn around and see her sitting on the lap of Hugo. He's bouncing her around, and she laughs and smiles at him. I can't describe the feeling that came over me, but I heard myself say, "Put her down now," and started walking towards them. I didn't run, as if afraid to spook him and cause him to run off with her, and also I didn't want to scare the child. He must have been watching me, following me without me noticing, I thought, the sick bastard.
Such a pretty little princess,
he said.
She's got your smile.
Come to me, I said to my niece, but then his grip around her tightened and she stopped giggling and looked at me with disbelief. My dog was now sensing that something had changed, that there was some sort of diffused threat in the air, and started to bark dementedly.
Go play with the dog, princess, and your aunt and I will take a little walk,
Hugo said to my niece, but his eyes were locked on me.
Isn't that right, darling? He added,
a thin veil covering an open threat. Okay, the girl agreed, and he reached out a hand to me, grabbing hold of my arm before letting go of the child. Go play, I said to her, trying to sound normal. Go play with the dog, but stay clear of the water. I'll be right back. At this, Hugo sniggered and yanked me with him down the trail. So, how come you're here this evening? I asked, trying to sound casual and not scared out of my mind.
You told them I was a perv. You told the police I was a stalker. I'm just looking out for you. Don't you see that? I do everything for you, and you're just an ungrateful, deceiving little bitch.
I didn't realize you were looking out for me, I said, unsure of how to handle the situation, waiting for an opportunity to run.
Of course, if I wanted to make sure you didn't try and do anything stupid on our date, I would have taken the girl with us. See? I'm no monster. I'm your protector, your soulmate, so I let her be. I'm nice like that.
At this, he stops in his tracks, turns around to face me, and lets go of my arm to touch my face. Before I knew what I was doing, I had shoved the heel of my hand directly into his trachea, the way we had practiced so many times during my conscription year, but never thought I would use it in real life. Never hesitate. If you need to do this, then do it with all you've got. There are no second chances, our instructor had said, and I had apparently paid better attention than I knew. To my surprise, Hugo went down on his knees, a stunned look on his face and both hands clutching his throat. Run, I thought, run. I ran back to where I had left my niece and dog, and snatched her up from the ground and ran with the dog barking by my side to the car. I threw the now crying child and the dog into the car and sped off. No seat belts, no child seats, no nothing. I drove to the same police station that I had visited once before, and actually got to see the same policeman. They didn't find him where I had left him, but retrieved my bag that had been left at the scene, as well as a dog lead and my niece's sunglasses. My niece had no idea that he wasn't a good guy, and no one could testify as to what had happened. He was never brought in, and I never got the ending I wanted. It took a long time until I stopped looking over my shoulder and went out running. Even longer before I could open my door when the doorbell rang, without first reaching for my pepper spray. I haven't seen or heard from him since that day. When I was like 6, I was at the supermarket with my mum and my sister who was 4 years old, while my mum did shopping. We were near the end and she realized that she'd forgotten something from the freezer aisle, so she sent me and my sister back to get it. I had always been a pretty paranoid kid and I never trusted, and still don't, all of the strangers around me, even though I live in a really safe place where nothing really ever happens. Now I'm kind of glad that I'm like this. While my sister was reaching into the freezer to get the bag of whatever it was, I noticed this weird guy in a long black coat, wearing all black. I don't remember what his face looked like because I was quite young, but I just remember he was wearing all black. He looks at me and I get this uneasy feeling in my stomach. While my sister's looking for whatever we need, he's just staring at us and I slowly grow more fearful of him. I think he noticed that we weren't with our parents and he started walking towards us. I tell my sister to hurry up so we can go back to my mum. She gets the stuff and we leave the aisle to go look for my mum. But as we leave, so does the creepy guy. Okay, maybe it's just a coincidence, I think at first. But he still gives me a bad feeling, so I tell my sister to hurry up and we pick up the pace and start walking faster. I look back, and my little heart skips a beat as I find out that he also picked up the pace and is gaining on us. Now, I tell my sister that we need to go and grab her hand and run as fast as my little 6-year-old legs will carry me, her trying to keep up as I pull her along. I look back to check, and find that the creepy guy is now running after us. Obviously he was a lot taller and faster than us and probably would have caught up soon, but I looked down an aisle and saw my mum and ran to her. The guy was still running when we got to the aisle, but when he saw that we were with our mum, he slowed down and stared at us as he walked by. Needless to say, I didn't leave my mum's side at the supermarket for quite a while after that. The following story comes from 2013 when I was making my living as a bartender in a small lounge just off Washington Square Park. Lopez was a Sunday brunch regular that I dreaded seeing every weekend. An elderly Latino man, he was both very gay and very healthy, having formerly been a high-ranking employee at the UN. It may seem strange to say, but Lopez was very different from your average gay man. He was a special breed. He'd been gay since being gay in New York City was dangerous. This made him tough and pushy. Though Lopez was old and frail in appearance, he was an intimidating bastard in spirit. When he had set his eyes on a target, nothing could frighten him off its trail. I unfortunately became that target before even realizing it. I was a tall, broad-shouldered 25-year-old man at the time. My image was the last thing that came to mind when I thought victim of sexual harassment. That's why it caught me so off guard. At first, Lopez and I made the regular small talk. I told him about myself. He told me about himself. Then I served him a glass of Albarino and went about my business. Soon, however, Lopez began staying through my entire shift and demanding my attention virtually the entire time. He would even go out of his way to frighten off the other regulars I'd chat with. His tone changed. It went from cordial to syrupy sweet. The conversations he'd chat me in began focusing more and more on past sexual exploits and lovers. That's when he started to make moves.
Sometimes I just want to fuck you so bad,
he'd say, or
if I could just see you in a thong.
I wasn't about to have this at work, so I told my friend and manager. He blew me off, however, told me Lopez was a nice guy, and that he'd take really good care of me if I let him. I was shocked by this. When I told the general manager, he went one step further and accused me of being a homophobe. At this point, I knew it was up to me to handle this. The next Sunday when Lopez sat at the bar, I looked him dead in the face and said, "Don't fuck with me today. I'm not interested and will not be harassed." Even while I spoke, Lopez's lips curled into a smile. He was pleased that he had shaken me up this much, and I felt immediately powerless. The following Sunday was to be my last. I had given notice and told everyone exactly why I was leaving. Lopez has been begging me every week to spend time with him after my shift. That past Sunday, when I had so unsuccessfully tough-talked him, he even waited for me outside. I was not going to let things progress any further. Since this was to be my first stretch of unemployment in a while, I had also decided to take advantage and realize a lifelong desire to visit Brazil. I had purchased tickets but had not yet told anyone at work about these plans. That Sunday came and went as usual with Lopez sitting at his regular spot, lavishing me with compliments and repeatedly inviting me to his home. To my relief, he left well before my shift ended. As I headed home that late one afternoon, however, I found myself staring straight into Lopez's face as I rounded a corner. He quickly locked arms with me and began steering me in a different direction. I freaked out and immediately recoiled. He apologized.
Hey, I know I give you a lot of crap, but it's all just a tease. You know that, right?
He said, and similar things as well. All of a sudden, Lopez didn't seem so bad. I actually felt a little guilty taking his advances so personally. In this frame of mind, I stupidly agreed to get a drink with him. We went to a brightly coloured Mexican restaurant where everyone seemed to know Lopez. The whole group was about his age and definitely represented the leftovers of Greenwich Village's glory days. Things got strange quickly. A wrinkled old lady in a miniskirt waltzed over and kissed Lopez on the cheek, then, without even being introduced, slipped her hands in between my legs and began rubbing my upper thigh. When I backed away, she turned to Lopez and said, "You need to open this sweet young flower up." Keep in mind, she's talking about a bearded man, adding to the creepiness factor. He smiled at me and replied,
"Oh, Chichi, this one's too young and strong. We have to break him first."
The feeling of sitting there and hearing two elderly people talk about me like a sexual favor that was about to be passed around was too much to handle. I got up and left. As I hit the door, and this was by far the worst part, Lopez called after me.
"Leave now, but who knows what old friends you might just run into in Brazil."
To this day, I still have no idea how he knew of my travel plans. I have told no one at my job. Either way, cue 3 weeks of me perpetually looking over my shoulder in Rio de Janeiro. Fortunately, my stalker lost interest by the time I returned. But let me just emphasize, Lopez, let's never, ever meet again.